Mom's finally too weak to resist. My son laughed to his wife. I heard everything and stayed quiet. For months, they thought I was fragile while I collected every document, every text, every lie. The day I walked into the lawyer's office with my evidence, my son's face went white. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. I placed the folder on the polished mahogany desk. It was a simple beige file, the kind I used for years to organize my lesson plans. The contents, however, were not about teaching history to children. The woman across from me, attorney Rebecca Shaw, reached for it with a measured curiosity. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, met mine for a moment before she opened the cover. I watched her scan the first page, a photocopy of a bank statement with certain lines highlighted in yellow. Her expression did not change, but I saw the subtle shift in her posture, a slight straightening of her spine. She understood the weight of what I had brought her. This moment, this quiet office with its leather chairs and shelves of legal books, was the destination. The journey began in my own kitchen 1 month ago. I remember the smell of coffee that morning. It was a Tuesday. I had been on my way to retrieve the newspaper from the front porch. My path took me past the kitchen doorway. Marcus's voice, low and conspiratorial, stopped me. He was speaking to Chloe. I did not mean to eavesdrop, I simply froze. "The appraisal came back higher than I thought," he said. I heard the clink of a mug. "It's perfect. With that equity, we can clear the credit line and have a cushion. The timing is right." Chloe's voice was thinner, hesitant. "Marcus, I don't know. She seems fine. What if she says no?" His laugh was a short, dry sound. It held no warmth. Say no to what? To a simpler life? To financial security? We're presenting it as a solution, not a request. We'll handle everything. She just needs to sign. There was a pause. I held my breath, my hand resting against the cool wall. "But she's sharp," Chloe insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. "She's tired," Marcus corrected, his voice dropping further, as if sharing a delicious secret. "She's slowing down. Haven't you noticed? She forgets little things. She asked me twice last week what day it was. The fatigue from her last bout of bronchitis never really left. She's vulnerable. And now she's finally too weak to resist." The words were precise. They landed in the quiet of the hallway with the force of physical blows. Finally too weak to resist. He said it with relief, with celebration. I closed my eyes. The sting was immediate and acute, a hot rush of shame and betrayal that climbed from my chest to my throat. I saw his face in my mind, my son, the boy I raised alone after his father left, the man I helped through college. I saw his handsome features, the charming smile he could summon on command. I saw the calculation that now lived behind his eyes, a calculation I had chosen for too long to mistake for concern. I did not make a sound. I did not gasp or cry out. The initial wave of pain crested, and then it receded, leaving something else in its wake. A cold, clear emptiness. A familiar space. I had known this feeling before, decades ago, when I had to decide whether to sink or swim as a young mother with a child to raise. This was not grief. Not yet. This was the moment of decision. I opened my eyes. My reflection was faint in the dark glass of a framed photograph nearby. My face, my silver hair, my steady gaze. I watched that woman. She did not look weak. She looked still. She looked like a person observing a problem that required a solution. I turned away from the kitchen doorway. I did not retrieve the newspaper. I walked back to my bedroom, my steps silent on the carpet. My heart beat a steady, slow rhythm in my ears. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my hands. They were capable hands. They had graded thousands of papers, held books, comforted a child, built a life. Marcus was correct about one thing. I was tired. But it was not a fatigue of the body. It was the profound weariness of pretense. I was tired of pretending I did not see the way his eyes lingered on the deed to the house when we discussed bills. I was tired of ignoring the condescension in his tone when he explained, slowly, things I already understood. I had allowed the narrative of my gradual decline to take root because it was easier than conflict. I thought I was keeping peace. He thought he was seeing weakness. That ended in the hallway. My first action was practical. I needed a record. I went to my desk, an old wooden roll top, and took out a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote the date and a single line. Overheard M in kitchen with C. Finally too weak to resist. Discussing equity, my signature. The act of writing it down transformed the raw hurt into data, a fact, an entry point. The next step required evidence. Marcus often left his briefcase in the home office, a small room we used for paperwork. He was still in the kitchen. I moved down the hall. The door was ajar. His briefcase was on the desk, open. A manila folder lay inside. The tab labeled Home Equity Options. My hands were perfectly steady. I did not rifle through it. I took my smartphone, a model Marcus had given me 2 Christmases ago, with a patronizing speech about staying connected. I opened the camera. I lifted the first page of the document, a cover letter from a mortgage broker I did not know, and photographed it. I took a picture of the second page. I heard a chair scrape in the kitchen. I placed the pages back exactly as they were, closed the briefcase, and left the room. Back in my bedroom, I reviewed the images. They were clear. I created a new, password-protected folder on my phone and uploaded them. I named the folder Garden Plans. Then I deleted the images from my main photo gallery. The rest of that day, I performed my role. I came to the kitchen for lunch, moving a little slower than usual. I asked Marcus to repeat a story he had told me, feigning a lapse in memory. I saw the satisfied gleam in his eye. He patted my hand. "Don't worry about it, Mom. It's not important." I smiled, a soft, vague smile. "You're right, dear. My mind isn't what it used to be." That evening, as I lay in bed, I did not think of the son I had lost. I thought of the task ahead. I needed more. Bank statements, emails, recordings of conversations. I needed to understand the full scope of his plan. This was not a reaction. It was a project. A meticulous, necessary project to reclaim what was mine. Sitting now in Rebecca Shaw's office, watching her turn the pages of my beige folder, I felt that same cold clarity. She looked up from a scanned image of a check made out to Marcus, endorsed with a shaky version of my signature that I had never written. "This is very thorough, Mrs. Williams," she said, her voice calm and professional. "It is the beginning," I replied. My voice was even. "There is more to show you." I settled back in the chair. To get here, to this moment of quiet presentation, I had to travel back to the beginning. I had to become, for him, exactly the woman he believed I was, and I had to document every single step of the lie. Rebecca Shaw closed the folder. She did not speak for a moment, her fingers resting on its cover. "The first step is to establish a pattern," she finally said. "What you have here is a strong start. We need more. We need a clear timeline of coercion, of financial manipulation. Can you continue as you have been? It will require careful performance." I nodded. "I have been performing for some time already. I know the role he expects." Leaving her office that day, the beige folder now in her possession, I felt a new sense of direction. The vague, cold purpose that had taken root in my hallway had been given a shape and a name. It was a legal strategy. My private project now had a collaborator, but the essential work still had to be done by me, alone, in the house that was no longer my home, but my field of operation. The performance intensified. It was a conscious application of observation. I had watched Marcus for months, noting what triggered his patronizing assurance, what fed his narrative of my decline. I began to feed it back to him. The next morning, I made a point of struggling with the lid on my jar of marmalade at breakfast. My hands, which were quite capable, developed a slight tremor when he was looking. I let the jar slip, catching it with a small gasp. "Let me get that, Mom," Marcus said, rising quickly from the table. He twisted the lid open with ease and set it before me. "You shouldn't strain yourself." "Thank you, dear," I said, my voice soft. "My arthritis seems worse in the mornings." I had no arthritis. He smiled, a smile of usefulness. "You just tell me what you need help with." I began to curate my complaints. They were minor, plausible. A stiffness in my knee after gardening, a need for a nap in the afternoon. I would ask him to repeat things, not because I hadn't heard, but because I wanted him to believe I was struggling to process information. "The news is so confusing these days," I would say, letting the newspaper fall into my lap. "All these numbers. It's too much." He ate it up. He started summarizing articles for me in simple terms. He took over sorting the mail, saying it was too much clutter for me to bother with. This was a crucial gain. It gave him a sense of control and gave me a reason to be near his administrative activities. My bedroom became my command center. Each night after I was certain he and Chloe had retired, I would open the garden plans folder on my phone. I started a digital journal, a running log in the notes application. Every interaction was recorded. April 12th. M took over mail sorting. Told him I felt overwhelmed by paperwork. He offered to handle all the boring stuff. April 15th. Complained of headache, retired early, heard M and C in living room. M said, "C, she's fading. We need to move before she has a real episode and things get complicated." The most valuable tool was the voice memo function. My phone was often beside me on the side table or in the pocket of my cardigan. I learned to activate the record function with a discreet tap under the tablecloth or before entering a room where he was. One afternoon, he brought me a cup of tea. He sat opposite me in the living room, adopting a posture of concerned conversation. "You know, Mom, I've been worrying about you being in this big house all alone. The stairs, the upkeep. It's a lot for anyone." I took a slow sip of tea, my phone resting on the cushion beside my leg, recording. "I've managed for 30 years, I said, allowing a note of gentle defiance to enter my voice. It was important he felt he was overcoming resistance. "Of course you have," he said, his tone soothing, "but managing isn't the same as thriving. What if there was a way to free you from the burden, to unlock the value you've built up here so you could have cash for anything you need without the worry?" "What do you mean, unlock the value?" I asked, feigning confusion. "It's just a financial tool," he said, waving a hand. "A reverse mortgage. The bank pays you, based on the house. You get to stay here, with money in the bank for your care, for anything you want, and I could handle all the complicated parts for you." I let my gaze wander to the window as if considering. It sounds complicated. All those legal words. My mind gets tired. "That's exactly why I'm here," he said, leaning forward, his voice earnest. "To handle the complicated parts, to protect you." I looked back at him, letting my eyes appear slightly moist. "You're a good son, Marcus." He patted my hand, a gesture of victory. The recording captured the faint, satisfied sigh he emitted as he sat back. Later, in my room, I labeled the audio file 4-18_T_protection. I uploaded it to a cloud storage account I had created under a pseudonym. The digital journal entry that night was concise. He presented the core concept, framed as protection burden relief, used my stated fatigue as justification. I performed hesitation, followed by grateful acceptance of his role. The physical acts of weakness were one thing. The psychological discipline was another. I had to stifle every instinct to argue, to correct, to assert my competence. When he explained how my own thermostat worked, I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood and nodded slowly. When Chloe, with a hesitant look, brought me a simplified version of a crossword puzzle book, I thanked her with genuine warmth, because her guilt was also data. Her discomfort was a thread I might pull later. I was not becoming weak. I was becoming an archivist of my own supposed decline. Every condescending explanation, every taken-over task, every reference to my fading mind was another document for the file. The kind of old I was, I realized, was not the kind of old he saw. My age was not a liability, it was a cover. It provided the invisibility I needed to operate. He saw a fading mother. I was, in fact, a librarian, quietly cataloging the evidence of my own betrayal, methodically building a case from the fragments of his arrogance. The performance was exhausting, but each night as I added another entry to my records, I felt a counterweight of pure, solid determination. He was building his plan on a foundation of sand, his perception of me. I was building mine on stone, facts, dates, and his own recorded words. The digital journal entries accumulated. The audio files, labeled and dated, formed a damning chorus of Marcus's carefully constructed narrative. But words, while powerful, were not enough. Rebecca Shaw had been clear. We needed the paper trail. The financial fingerprints. I needed to connect his soothing promises to the concrete movement of my money. This required a shift in my approach. Passive recording was insufficient. I needed to actively seek documents. Marcus had taken over the mail, but the monthly bank and investment statements still arrived in their windowed envelopes. He would open them, review them, and then file them, or so I assumed, in the home office. I needed to see them. My opportunity came on a Thursday. Marcus mentioned he and Chloe were going to a dinner with potential clients. "We'll be back late, Mom. Don't wait up. Just order in my treat." He left a $50 bill on the kitchen counter. The gesture felt like payment for an evening of unimpeded access. I waited until the headlights of his car had disappeared down the street. The house was very quiet. I did not turn on many lights. I went directly to the home office. His filing cabinet was a simple 2-drawer metal unit. It was locked. This was new. I checked the desk drawers. They contained ordinary supplies. The center drawer, however, yielded a result. My fingers brushed against a small, cold metal object taped to the underside of the drawer's upper panel. A key. It fit the filing cabinet. The top drawer held household warranties, insurance policies, and tax returns from previous years. The bottom drawer held the current files. I found a hanging folder labeled Mom Orsi Finances. My hands did not shake as I lifted it out. Inside were the last 6 months of statements from my checking account, my savings account, and a modest investment portfolio I had maintained since my teaching days. I sat in his desk chair and examined them under the light of the brass desk lamp. The checking account showed regular automated transfers out, $200 here, $500 there. The descriptions were vague. Online transfer or bill pay. The destination account number was abbreviated, but it was not one I recognized as my own. The cumulative total over 6 months was nearly $4,000. The savings account showed a single larger withdrawal from 3 months prior, $12,000. The memo line read, Home Repair Loan, M. I had not authorized a home repair loan. I had not been asked about any repair of that cost. I took my phone from my pocket and photographed each relevant page, ensuring the account numbers and dates were clear. The investment statement was the most revealing. It showed a request for a distribution form had been processed. A lump sum of $25,000 had been liquidated and dispersed. The pay to information was missing from the copy, but a handwritten note in Marcus's script was paper-clipped to it. Deposited to Joint Act. For tax cushion. Discuss with Mom later. He had not discussed it. He had done it. I photographed the statement and the note. I returned everything to its exact position, locked the cabinet, and returned the key to its hiding place. The $50 bill on the counter seemed a pathetic counterpoint to the sums I had just discovered. The evidence required a response within my performance. 2 nights later, during a dinner Chloe had prepared, I introduced a note of confused concern. "Marcus, dear," I began, pushing my food around my plate. "I got one of those automated calls from the bank today. Something about unusual activity. It probably wasn't anything, but it worried me. He looked up sharply, then smoothed his expression. "Those are just scams, Mom. You should hang up immediately. Did you give them any information?" "Oh, no," I said, waving a hand. "I just got flustered. I couldn't even remember which account they were talking about. My memory for those numbers is gone." I had activated the voice recorder in my cardigan pocket before sitting down. "See, that's the kind of stress you don't need," he said, his voice taking on that patient, explaining tone. "This is exactly why I'm handling things, so you don't have to get these scary calls. From now on, if anything like that comes to the house, you just give it to me. I'll take care of it." "But shouldn't I know what's happening with my own money?" I asked, injecting a thin thread of defiance. He put his fork down. "Mom, you do know. You're safe. You're provided for. The details are just noise. You have to trust me to manage the noise so you can have peace. Isn't that what you want? Peace?" I let my shoulders slump, a picture of defeated gratitude. "Yes, peace. Thank you, Marcus." Chloe, throughout this, said nothing. She focused on cutting her food into very small pieces. Her silence was its own kind of testimony. That night, I labeled the audio file 4-25_dinner_unusual activity. The journal entry was longer. I detailed the amounts I had discovered and transcribed the key parts of the dinner conversation. The pattern was now undeniable. Systematic diversion of funds, coupled with deliberate isolation from financial information. I had the evidence. I had the recordings. I now needed the instrument to wield them. It was time to move beyond my own four walls. The following morning, I told Marcus I was meeting an old friend from the library for lunch and a bit of shopping. He seemed pleased. "That's great, Mom. Get out, have some fun." I did meet my friend, Gloria. We had worked together for 20 years. She was a woman of discretion and formidable intelligence. Over chicken salad sandwiches at a quiet diner, I spoke in general terms. "Gloria, I find myself in a situation where I may need legal advice. A family financial matter. It's sensitive. Do you know of anyone trustworthy? Someone who specializes in elder affairs?" Gloria looked at me for a long moment. She did not ask for details. She simply saw the resolve in my eyes, the absence of panic. She nodded. "My cousin used a lawyer a few years back, Shaw, Rebecca Shaw. She helped with an inheritance dispute. She was sharp and she was kind. No nonsense." Gloria wrote the name and number on a napkin. "She's good, Eleanor." I took the napkin, the simple paper suddenly feeling like a tangible lifeline. "Thank you." "Do you need anything else?" Gloria asked. "Not yet," I said, "but I may." That was how the first external connection was made. The evidence was gathered. The ally was identified. The isolated project was about to become a coordinated campaign. I drove home, the napkin with Rebecca Shaw's number folded securely in my wallet. I felt the weight of the documents and recordings, a gathering mass of truth. Marcus was busy spending the money he was slowly draining. I was busy building the case that would stop him. Every check, every text, every patronizing explanation was a brick in a wall he did not yet see rising around him. The number on the napkin was more than a contact. It was a checkpoint. I had gathered the evidence of the thefts. Now I needed the central document, the instrument of the larger crime. I did not have to wait long. Marcus, emboldened by my continued performance of confusion and gratitude, moved to the next phase. He arrived on a Saturday afternoon. Chloe was with him, her presence a silent reinforcement. He carried a sleek leather folio, not his usual briefcase. I was in the living room, pretending to doze over a book. The sun was bright through the bay window, casting a warm square on the rug. The domestic calm was a lie. "Mom?" His voice was gentle, artificially soft. "Sorry to wake you. We need to talk about something important, for your own good." I blinked slowly, letting my eyes focus on him as if emerging from a deep sleep. "Oh, Marcus, Chloe, what is it?" I made a show of setting the book aside and smoothing my sweater. He sat on the sofa opposite me, placing the folio on the coffee table. Chloe perched on the armrest beside him, not meeting my eyes. She studied her hands. "We've been worried," he began, leaning forward with an expression of grave concern. "The market is getting volatile. Your fixed income isn't stretching as far. And this house, it's an asset, but it's also a burden. Property taxes, maintenance, insurance. It's a lot of risk for you to carry alone." I nodded, allowing a look of worry to crease my forehead. I suppose it is." "We found a solution," he said, his tone brightening. He opened the folio. Inside was a thick stack of papers, neatly clipped. The top page had bold lettering, "Home Equity Conversion Mortgage Agreement." He slid it toward me. "A reverse mortgage. It's perfect. The bank pays you a lump sum, based on the value of the house. You get to stay here, exactly as you are, but with a significant cushion in the bank. No more monthly mortgage payments, they're eliminated. The money is for your care, for anything you need or want. It simplifies everything." He made it sound like a gift, a relief. I let my gaze drop to the dense blocks of text, the legalese. "It looks so complicated," I murmured. "That's why I'm here," he said, a hint of impatience beneath the patience. "I've had my financial advisor look it over. It's all in order. All you need to do is sign in a few places. I've marked them with these yellow flags." He pointed to bright sticky notes protruding from the edge of the document stack. I reached for the top page. My hand, intentionally, trembled. Not a wild shake, but the fine, unsteady quiver of age. I let the paper rustle. "My eyes aren't what they used to be, Marcus. This small print, and my hand is so unsteady today. I don't want to make a mistake." He smiled, a tight stretch of his lips. "There's no mistake, Mom. It's just a formality. But if you want to be thorough, you can look it over. Take your time." His eyes flicked to Chloe, a silent communication. He was confident I would not understand it, and that even if I tried, I would eventually defer to him. "May I take it to my reading lamp?" I asked, my voice frail. "The light is better there, and I'll need my glasses." "Of course," he said, sitting back. The condescension was a palpable force in the room. He believed he was humoring me. I gathered the heavy stack of papers, making a slight show of the effort. My heart was beating a steady, strong rhythm against my ribs, entirely at odds with the weak figure I projected. I carried the documents to my armchair by the window, where my reading glasses and a large magnifying lens lay on a side table. I also had my phone. I sat down, arranged the papers on my lap, and put on my glasses. I picked up the magnifier, knowing it completed the picture of a feeble old woman scrutinizing something beyond her grasp. I began to slowly turn pages. The first dozen pages were definitions, disclosures, federal warnings. I made soft, confused noises, shaking my head occasionally. I could feel Marcus's gaze on me, a mix of amusement and anticipation. Under the cover of the large magnifying lens and the papers, I held my phone. I opened the camera. I positioned the lens over the first flagged signature page and took a picture. The click was silent. I turned the page. Another flagged section. Another photograph. I worked methodically, page by page, capturing every term, every number, every blank line awaiting my signature. I took extra care with the pages that outlined the disbursement. A single large lump sum payment. The account listed for receipt was not in my name. It was a joint account belonging to Marcus and Chloe. I photographed that page twice. The process took 20 minutes. I made a show of rubbing my eyes. "It's all so much," I sighed, loudly enough for him to hear. "You don't need to understand every word, Mom," Marcus called from the sofa. "You just need to trust that it's the right thing for your security." I looked over at him, then at Chloe. She was staring out the window, her posture rigid. I saw the conflict there, the shame. It was useful data. "I suppose you're right," I said, my voice yielding. I carefully gathered the papers, making sure they were in perfect order. I carried them back to the coffee table and placed them before him. "It's for my own good. I trust you." The relief that washed over his face was immediate and profound. He thought the battle was over. He thought the fortress had surrendered without a shot. "You won't regret this," he said, placing a hand over mine. His skin was warm and dry. "This secures your future." That night, I uploaded 43 photographs to the Garden Plans folder. I labeled the album Reverse Mortgage Docs, 5 to 10. In my digital journal, I wrote, "Presented papers, pressure framed as concern for my security and simplification. Chloe visibly uncomfortable. Documents show disbursement to M and C joint account. I performed physical and cognitive weakness to enable photography. He believes agreement is secured." I put the phone down. The central fraudulent document was now in my possession, digitally copied in full. He had the physical papers ready for my signature. I had the evidence of their contents and the recording of the conversation where he pressured me to sign them. The trap was no longer just an idea. It had a shape, a weight, and a paper trail. All that remained was to spring it. The photographs of the mortgage documents were the final piece of the evidentiary puzzle. I had the financial records. I had the audio recordings of the pressure and the patronizing justifications. I had the paper trail of unauthorized transfers. Now I had the instrument of the intended fraud itself. The project was complete. It was time to hand it over to the professional. The next morning, I told Marcus I was going to the library to return some books and would likely have lunch with Gloria again. He barely looked up from his tablet. "Enjoy, Mom." I did not go to the library. I drove to a strip mall on the other side of town. There was an old payphone outside a laundromat, one of the few remaining. I did not want the call to appear on my home phone records or my cell bill. I dialed the number from the napkin. A brisk professional voice answered. Law offices of Rebecca Shaw. "My name is Eleanor Williams. Gloria Peterson referred me. I need to consult with Ms. Shaw on a matter of financial coercion and potential elder fraud. I have comprehensive documentation." There was a brief pause. "One moment, please." After a minute, another voice came on the line. It was lower, calmer, with no trace of artificial warmth. "Ms. Williams, this is Rebecca Shaw. Gloria is an old friend. Can you meet me today? Say 11:30 at the Daily Grind on Maple?" "Yes," I said. "I will be there." The Daily Grind was a small, independent cafe with mismatched wooden tables and the rich smell of roasted coffee. I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner, away from the window. I placed my large handbag on the chair beside me. Inside was the new expanded version of my beige folder, containing printed copies of the most critical evidence, along with a flash drive holding all the digital files. Rebecca Shaw arrived exactly at 11:30. She was a tall woman in her 50s, with short steel gray hair and a navy pantsuit. She carried a leather satchel. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me with an immediate, assessing focus. She did not smile, but gave a short, polite nod as she approached. "Eleanor Williams?" she asked. "Yes. Please sit." She took the chair opposite me, setting her satchel on the floor. A waitress came over. Rebecca ordered a black coffee. I ordered tea. When the waitress left, Rebecca leaned forward slightly, her hands folded on the table. "Gloria said it was sensitive. Tell me, in your own words, what is happening." I did not start with emotion. I started with facts. My son, Marcus Williams, has over the past year systematically isolated me from my financial affairs. He has made unauthorized withdrawals from my accounts totaling approximately $41,000. He is now pressuring me to sign a reverse mortgage with the disbursement to go into a joint account he holds with his wife. He believes I am cognitively impaired and too weak to resist. I have been gathering evidence of all of this. Her expression did not change, but her gaze intensified. "What kind of evidence?" I opened my handbag and placed the beige folder on the table between us. I slid it toward her. Printed copies of bank statements with the withdrawals highlighted, a copy of an investment distribution form he initiated, photographs of every page of the reverse mortgage agreement, which shows the disbursement account, transcripts and audio files of conversations where he frames this as being for my own good while dismissing my concerns and emphasizing my confusion. Rebecca Shaw opened the folder. She spent several minutes flipping through the pages, her eyes moving quickly. She paused at the photographed mortgage pages, noting the yellow flags marking signature lines. She looked at the printout of the bank statement with the $12,000 home repair loan withdrawal. Finally, she closed the folder and looked at me. "This is exceptionally well organized," she said. Her voice held a note of professional admiration. "You understand the need for a clear timeline and documentary proof." "I was a librarian," I said. "Organization is a habit." She nodded. "The audio recordings. Were they made with his knowledge?" "No. They were made secretly from my personal phone in my own home during conversations he initiated." She considered this. "The legality of that varies by state, but for our initial purposes, building a case for coercion and fraud with Adult Protective Services and the police, it's compelling. It shows intent and pattern. The financial documents are the bedrock." She took a sip of her coffee. "What is your desired outcome, Eleanor?" I had prepared for this question. First, to stop the mortgage fraud from being completed. Second, to recover the misappropriated funds. Third, to secure my physical and financial independence from him, permanently. "Criminal charges?" she asked, watching me closely. "If the evidence supports them, yes, I want the truth to have consequences." A slight, grim smile touched her lips. "Good." She opened her satchel and took out a legal pad. "Here is what we do. We have to let him think he is succeeding for a little while longer. We need that mortgage to advance to the point where his fraudulent intent is unambiguous, but not so far that the funds are irrecoverable or the loan is irrevocable. You will need to sign the papers." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach, but my face remained still. "I understand." "We will, however, control the circumstances. Before you sign his copy, you will sign an identical copy in my presence. We will have it notarized separately. That copy will be your true, voluntary signature, executed under the advice of counsel. It will invalidate any signature obtained under coercion. It also creates a contemporaneous record of your mental capacity and intent." The plan was elegant. It turned the act of signing from a defeat into a tactical move. "He will want to be present when I sign," I said. "Let him be," Rebecca said. "Your performance will be crucial. You must be the woman he believes you to be, hesitant, confused, ultimately reliant on his guidance. It will be the last act of that performance. Once the funds are disbursed to his account, and we will monitor this, we will have the final piece. Then we file reports with APS and the Police Fraud Division. We will also file a civil suit for restitution and financial abuse. We will schedule a meeting under a pretext and confront him with everything." She outlined the steps with calm precision. The legal machinery, which had seemed like a distant, complex system, became a series of actionable steps. My lonely project was now a collaborative mission. "How do we communicate?" I asked. "We will use a secure email service. I will give you the credentials today. Do not use your personal email or phone for anything related to this case. Assume he is monitoring them." I agreed. She wrote down the information on a sheet of her legal pad, tore it off, and handed it to me. I placed it in my wallet next to the now crumpled napkin with her number. "This will be difficult," she said, her tone softening for the first time. "Emotionally, you are laying a trap for your own child." I met her eyes. "He laid the trap first. I am simply collecting the spring." The words came out flat and cold. I did not feel the need to dress them in sorrow, not here, not with her. Rebecca Shaw gave a single firm nod. She understood. We finished our drinks. We were not friends, not yet. We were allies, a librarian and a lawyer, building a case. The meeting was over. I drove home. The plan a solid weight in my mind, a counterbalance to the performative fragility I would have to display until the end. The plan Rebecca Shaw and I constructed was a blueprint. My role was to follow it with exacting precision, to be the architect of my own apparent surrender. The first step was to create the alternative, notarized signature. 2 days after our meeting, I told Marcus I had a routine doctor's appointment. Instead, I went to Rebecca's office. The signing there was a quiet, formal affair. A neutral notary public, a woman with a brisk demeanor was present. Rebecca had prepared an identical set of the reverse mortgage documents. I read through them again, this time with comprehension. I asked Rebecca 2 clarifying questions about the disbursement timeline for the notary's benefit. Then, with a steady hand, I signed my name on every flagged line. Eleanor L. Williams. My signature was as it had always been. Clear, flowing, unmistakably mine. The notary stamped and signed each page, verifying my identity and my conscious, voluntary act. Rebecca placed the notarized set in a secure drawer. "This is your shield," she said. "Now, you must go and hand him the sword." The following Saturday, Marcus arrived. He carried the same leather folio. His energy was different today. It was charged, anticipatory. He could taste the finish line. Chloe was not with him. This, he must have decided, was a transaction best handled without witnesses prone to inconvenient guilt. "All set, Mom?" he asked, his voice artificially bright. He cleared a space on the kitchen table. "I suppose so," I said, allowing a note of trepidation to color my words. I sat down slowly, gripping the edge of the table as if for support. I had positioned my cardigan pocket toward the table edge, the phone inside recording. He opened the folio and laid out the documents, fanning them so the yellow flags were prominent. He placed the expensive-looking pen next to them. "It's very simple. Just sign where the yellow is. I'll guide you through." I looked at the first page, my expression blank. I let my hand hover over the pen, then withdrew it. It feels so final. "It's a beginning, Mom," he said, a thread of impatience in his voice. He covered it with a laugh. "A beginning of financial freedom. No more worries. Think of it that way." "I'm trying," I whispered. I picked up the pen. My hand, carefully, began to shake. Not the fine tremor from before, but a more pronounced, unsteady wobble. The pen tip danced above the signature line. "My hand isn't cooperating today. I'm so nervous." He watched the shaking pen, his lips pressed together. I saw the calculation in his eyes, frustration warring with the need to close the deal. "Here," he said, his voice tight. He reached over and placed his hand on top of mine, his grip firm. "Let me steady you. Just let me guide you." The touch of his hand was an electric shock of revulsion. His skin was warm, his fingers strong, as they closed over mine, enveloping my hand and the pen. He applied gentle pressure, moving our joined hands to position the pen on the line. "There. Now, just make your mark." I allowed my fingers to go slack within his grip. It was his force that moved the pen, tracing a crude, spidery version of my name. It did not resemble my true signature in the least. It was the mark of a child or of someone severely impaired. He lifted the pen, examined the scrawl with a satisfied nod, and turned the page to the next flag. The process repeated. Each time he placed his hand over mine and guided the pen. Each time I offered no resistance, only dead weight and a feigned look of anxious concentration. The act was a profound humiliation, but I detached from it. I was not signing my name. I was allowing him to create evidence. I was watching him commit fraud, stroke by guided stroke. "See? Easy," he said after the 6th signature, his voice buoyant now, the impatience gone. He was doing it. He was winning. The final signature was on the disbursement authorization, directing the funds to his joint account. He guided my hand there with particular care. When it was done, he released my hand. I let the pen clatter to the table and brought my other hand up to massage my fingers, as if they ached. He gathered the pages swiftly, checking each signature. He did not compare them to any known sample. He simply saw that ink was on the lines. He beamed at me, a radiant, victorious smile. "Congratulations, Mom. You've just secured your future. I'm so proud of you for being brave." I looked up at him, my eyes wide. "It's really done?" "It's really done. I'll submit these on Monday. The wheels are in motion." He leaned down and kissed my forehead, a patronizing benediction. "Now you can relax. Everything is handled." He left shortly after, the folio tucked under his arm like a trophy. I remained at the kitchen table. I stopped the recording on my phone. The silence in the house was absolute. I looked at my hand, the one he had gripped. There was no physical mark, but I felt the ghost of his pressure on my skin. I went to the sink and washed my hands with slow, deliberate motions, using soap and very warm water. I dried them thoroughly. Then I went to my bedroom and accessed the secure email. My message to Rebecca Shaw was brief. "The signing is complete. He guided my hand for every signature. Audio recording available. Awaiting disbursement." Her reply came an hour later. "Received. Well done. The trap is sprung. Now we wait for the spring to close. Maintain position." I sat in the quiet of my room. The emotional cost of the performance was a hollow, aching space inside me. But it was a calculated cost, a necessary expenditure. He believed he possessed my name, my equity, my future. He had, in fact, only possessed my hand for a few minutes. He had in his possession a document signed under duress, a fact now preserved in a notarized counterpart and an audio file. The pen had been in my hand, but the hand had been his instrument. The law would see the difference. I had signed my name twice that week, once in Truth, once in Theater. The Truth was safely filed away. The Theater was all he would ever get. The days following the signing were a study in Marcus's transformation. The tension he had carried in his shoulders was gone. His voice lost its patient, explanatory tone and regained its natural, confident cadence. He began to talk about home renovations, a new car, a vacation property. He did not say these things were for him, but the "we" he used had shifted. It no longer included me. It was the royal "we" of a man who had come into money. I maintained my position. I asked vague questions about the mortgage process, feigning confusion about timelines. He would pat my hand and say, "Don't you worry, Mom. It's all processing. You'll be taken care of." His phone buzzed more frequently, and he would step away to take calls with a new proprietary air. Then, on a Wednesday morning 2 weeks after the signing, I saw it. He came for a brief visit, ostensibly to check on me. He left his phone on the kitchen counter while he used the bathroom. The screen lit up with a notification from his banking app. The preview text was visible. "Deposit of $287,500. 00 to Joint Act 2231 completed. The last deposit." The spring had closed. I did not touch the phone. I simply noted the information. When he returned, I was stirring a cup of tea, my face placid. "Everything all right, Mom?" he asked, scooping up his phone. "Just fine, dear," I said. "The sun is out." That afternoon, I sent the prearranged signal to Rebecca Shaw via our secure channel. "The package has been delivered." Within an hour, I received a series of encrypted documents to review and a time for a conference call. The call took place the next day from a private booth at the public library. Rebecca's voice was all business. "The funds are in his account. We proceed to Phase 2. Today, I am filing a formal complaint with Adult Protective Services, alleging financial exploitation and coercion. I am also filing a parallel report with the Police Financial Crimes Unit, attaching the evidence portfolio. We have the notarized signature set, the bank records, the audio of the guided signing. It is an airtight case for fraud." "What is required of me?" I asked, my voice low. "You need to be prepared to leave the house on short notice," she said. "Once the authorities make contact with him, the situation could become volatile. Do you have a bag packed?" "I will." "Good. Also, change any passwords he might know. Email, any online accounts. Do it from a public computer or your phone, but not on your home Wi-Fi. Assume he may try to access them if he feels the net closing. I followed her instructions to the letter. That evening, I told Marcus I was feeling a cold coming on and would retire early. In my room, I took a small wheeled suitcase from the back of my closet. I packed it with efficiency, a week's worth of practical clothing, my medications, important personal documents I had kept separate from his filing cabinet, my jewelry box containing pieces from my mother. I added the current file from my desk, the original handwritten notes, a few printed photos. I did not pack sentimental items. This was not a retreat. It was a tactical relocation. The suitcase fit neatly back in the closet behind a row of hanging coats. The next day, I went to the library again. Using a guest computer, I changed the passwords to my primary email and my cloud storage account. I created new, complex strings of characters I had memorized. When I returned home, Marcus was there. He was in an exceptionally good mood. "There you are. I was thinking, Mom, now that things are settled, maybe we should look at some residential communities. Just for a tour? See what options are out there for when you're ready for a change." The audacity was breathtaking. The money was not yet a week in his account, and he was already planning my removal. I coughed lightly into a tissue. "A change of scenery might be nice," I said, my voice faint. "But not yet. I'm too tired to think about moving." He smiled, a magnanimous winner. "Of course. No rush. Whenever you're ready." He believed he had all the time in the world. That night, Rebecca confirmed the filings had been submitted. "The police will likely want to interview you after they review the file. APS will assign a caseworker. We will schedule the meeting with Marcus once the initial investigations are underway. The invitation will come from my office, framed as a necessary legal formality to finalize the asset transfer. He will walk in expecting a victory lap." I acknowledged her message. The legal machinery was now in motion, a silent, powerful engine turning in the background of our ordinary lives. My house, which had been my home, then my cage, then my stage, now felt like a temporary outpost. Every piece of furniture, every familiar view from a window was part of a set that was about to be struck. I moved through the rooms with a spectator's detachment. I ate my meals. I asked Marcus simple questions. I played my part. But underneath the performance, I was a general reviewing the final disposition of forces. The evidence was filed. The authorities were alerted. The money was traced. My escape bag was packed. All that remained was the confrontation. The gathering storm had built its pressure to the breaking point. Soon the sky would fall on Marcus Williams, and he would not see it coming until the first cold drops hit his face. My work was nearly done. Now I simply had to wait for the invitation to be issued. The legal machinery, once set in motion, operated with a quiet, impersonal efficiency. I received a brief, encrypted email from Rebecca Shaw confirming that Adult Protective Services had opened a case and that a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit had been assigned. My interview with the detective was scheduled for the following week at a neutral location. But first, the bait had to be taken. 3 days after the funds landed in his account, Marcus received a letter. It came via certified mail requiring his signature. I watched from the living room window as the postal carrier handed him the small clipboard. He signed with a flourish, took the letter, and examined the return address. I saw his face transform. A wide, genuine smile broke across it. He turned the envelope over in his hands, then tucked it into his jacket pocket with a pat, as if it were a winning lottery ticket. He did not open it in my presence. He came inside, humming. "Good news?" I asked from my armchair, setting my knitting aside. "Just some paperwork, Mom," he said, his voice light. "The final stages of that mortgage process. Looks like they need a few more signatures from me to wrap everything up. Standard bureaucratic stuff." He headed toward the kitchen, already pulling out his phone. I resumed my knitting, the needles clicking a steady, harmless rhythm. I knew the content of that letter. Rebecca had shown me a draft. It was on her firm's elegant letterhead. It requested Marcus Williams' presence at her office on a specified date and time to review and finalize the transfer of assets associated with the recent home equity conversion mortgage and to execute the concluding documentation. It was phrased in perfect legalese, sterile, and procedural. To Marcus, it would read as a summons to collect his prize. I heard him in the kitchen, his voice low but excited. He was on the phone with Chloe. I could not make out all the words, but his tone was triumphant. Next Tuesday, finally, just a formality. Wear the blue suit. He laughed, a short, sharp sound of pure satisfaction. He left soon after, giving me a breezy wave. Don't wait up for me tonight, Mom. Celebrating a bit with Chloe. You're all set for dinner? I have a casserole, I said. Perfect. And he was gone. The next day, he was practically buoyant. He stopped by in the afternoon, already talking as if the money was his to spend. You know, Mom, once this is all wrapped up, I was thinking we could finally get that new roof for you, the one we talked about, and maybe update the kitchen. It's looking a bit dated. I looked around my kitchen with its warm oak cabinets and the tile backsplash I had installed with my own hands 30 years ago. It suits me, I said quietly. Well, sure, for now, he said, missing the edge in my tone. But think of the resale value. We have to think ahead. The word we again, the royal we, the planning we. I simply nodded. That evening, Rebecca called me from a blocked number. The invitation has been received and accepted. He called my office to confirm the appointment. He was quite cheerful. He asked if he needed to bring anything, and my assistant told him just government ID and any relevant account information for the transfer. He will be expecting a victory lap, I said. He will be walking into a courtroom, she replied, her voice flat. The detective will be present, along with an APS caseworker. We will do the civil unveiling first, then introduce the criminal aspect. Are you prepared? I have been preparing for months, I said. My suitcase was packed. My files were duplicated. My mind was clear. Good. Do not alter your behavior between now and then. Be exactly as you have been. The performance must hold until the curtain rises. I followed her directive. The following days were an exercise in supreme restraint. Marcus floated through the house, making plans that involved my money and my home. He brought over paint samples. What do you think of this gray, Mom? Very modern. I told him it looked nice. He talked about investment properties. I nodded and said it sounded complicated. He was so deep in his fantasy of control that he saw my passivity as agreement, my silence as endorsement. The night before the meeting, he came to tell me he would be tied up all day Tuesday with legal and financial meetings. He told me not to worry if I couldn't reach him. It's the last big push, Mom. After this, it's smooth sailing. I am sure you have everything under control, I said, looking at him with the soft, unfocused gaze he had come to expect. Always, he said, straightening his cufflinks. He leaned down and kissed my cheek. This is all for you, you know, for your peace of mind. After he left, I went to my closet. I moved the coats aside and pulled out the small suitcase. I checked its contents one final time. Everything was in order. I would leave for the meeting directly from the house, with my bag. I would not be returning here to sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed. The house was silent. It was the silence of a theater after the audience has left, the stage waiting to be struck. I felt no nostalgia, only a profound readiness. The invitation had been issued and accepted. He would walk into that office wearing his blue suit, his face arranged in an expression of confident success. He believed he was going to finalize his theft. He was, in fact, walking into the mechanism of his own ruin. My only remaining task was to be there, seated calmly beside my lawyer, to watch the color drain from his face. I arrived at Rebecca Shaw's office 20 minutes early. I brought my suitcase, which I left with the receptionist. Rebecca met me in the hallway and led me into a large conference room. It had a long, polished table. A woman in a sober suit, introduced as Ms. Perez, from Adult Protective Services, sat at one end. A man in plain clothes, Detective Bryson, stood by the window looking out. He nodded to me when I entered. I took the seat Rebecca indicated, to the right of the head of the table. The chair was comfortable, with good support. I placed my hands in my lap and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, I heard Marcus's voice in the outer office, cheerful and proprietary. Marcus Williams here for my 10 o'clock with Attorney Shaw regarding the Williams estate matter. The door to the conference room opened. Rebecca's assistant gestured him in. Marcus stepped through wearing his blue suit, a folder under his arm, his expression one of pleasant anticipation. He took 2 steps into the room before he saw me. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then widened, becoming confused but still cordial. "Mom? What a surprise. I didn't know you'd be here." His eyes flicked to Rebecca, who remained standing at the head of the table. He took in Ms. Perez, then Detective Bryson, who had turned from the window. The confidence in Marcus's posture began to harden into something else, a wariness. "Please have a seat, Mr. Williams," Rebecca said, her voice neutral. She did not smile. Marcus pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table, facing me. He sat down, placing his folder before him. "Is everything all right? My mother? She can be confused by these legal matters. I hope she hasn't been bothered." "Your mother is not confused," Rebecca said. She remained standing. "She is the client who retained my services. We are here today to discuss the fraud you have perpetrated against her." The color in Marcus's face did not drain all at once. It receded, leaving a waxy pallor. He blinked. "I'm sorry? There must be a misunderstanding. I am here to finalize a reverse mortgage for my mother's benefit, to secure her care." The reverse mortgage, with a disbursement of $287,500 to your joint account with Chloe Williams, was obtained through coercion, forgery, and the exploitation of a vulnerable adult, Rebecca stated, her words precise as cut glass. She opened a thick binder. "We have filed reports with Adult Protective Services and the Financial Crimes Unit. Detective Bryson is here in that capacity." Marcus's head swiveled toward the detective, then back to Rebecca. His mouth opened, but no sound came out for a moment. Then he let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "This is ridiculous. Mom, tell them. You wanted this. You signed the papers." I looked at him. I said nothing. My face was a mask of calm observation. Rebecca continued, "We have your mother's original notarized signature on an identical set of documents, executed under the advice of counsel, which demonstrates her true intent and capacity. The signatures on the documents you submitted are forgeries, facilitated by you physically guiding her hand. We have an audio recording of that event." She pressed a button on a small device on the table. The sound was clear. My hesitant voice. "My hand isn't cooperating today." His voice tight with impatience. "Let me steady you." The rustle of clothing, the scratch of pen on paper, his triumphant, "See? Easy." Marcus stared at the device as if it were a venomous snake. The waxy pallor was now tinged with a sickly gray. That's taken out of context. She was nervous. I was helping her. "We also have bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals totaling $41,000, Rebecca went on, as if he had not spoken. She slid photocopies down the table toward him. "An investment liquidation you initiated without her knowledge or consent. A pattern of financial isolation and manipulation documented over 6 months in your mother's journal and supported by additional audio recordings." Ms. Perez spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but firm. "The evidence of exploitation is substantial, Mr. Williams." Marcus pushed back from the table, the legs of his chair scraping loudly on the floor. "This is a setup. She's old. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's being manipulated by this lawyer." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Tell them, Mom. Tell them this isn't what you want." I held his gaze. I saw the panic drowning the arrogance in his eyes. I felt nothing but a cold, clear expanse. I remained silent. "Your mother is perfectly capable of expressing her wishes," Rebecca said. "She has done so extensively and with documentation. She wishes for you to be prosecuted for fraud and theft. She wishes to recover every cent you have taken. She wishes to never be under your influence again." The word prosecuted seemed to finally break through. His bravado shattered. His eyes darted to the door, then to the detective, who had taken a step forward. Wait, please," Marcus stammered. He looked at Chloe, who was not there, and a desperate, ugly calculation flashed across his face. It wasn't all me. Chloe, she was part of it. She knew. She pressured me. It was her idea to look into the mortgage. She's the one who said Mom was getting too frail. "We will be speaking with Mrs. Williams separately," Detective Bryson said, his voice low and final. "Right now, we are speaking with you. The funds in the joint account have been frozen pursuant to a court order obtained this morning." Marcus's hands gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. He looked at me again, and now his expression was pure, naked supplication. The son I knew was gone, replaced by a terrified stranger. "Mom, please, I'm your son. I made a mistake. I was under pressure. We can fix this. We can give the money back. Don't do this. Don't let them take me away. Please." He was begging. The man who had celebrated my weakness was now broken by my strength. I looked at him, at the familiar lines of his face now contorted in fear, and I felt a distant, profound sorrow. Not for him, in this moment, but for the son I had lost long before today, for the boy I had raised who had become this man. I did not speak. I let the silence hang in the room, heavy with the weight of his crimes and my evidence. I let Rebecca Shaw, my ally, be the voice of my justice. Finally, I stood up. I smoothed the front of my dress. I looked at him one last time, my eyes conveying nothing but finality and a weary, unshakable resolve. Then I turned to Rebecca. "I believe our business here is concluded for now," I said, my voice even. "It is," she said. "Detective Bryson will take it from here." I walked to the door. I did not look back. I collected my suitcase from the receptionist and stepped out into the hallway. The door to the conference room closed behind me, muffling the sound of my son's crumbling world. The color of his shock, that draining gray pallor, was the last image I had of him. It was not a victory. It was a verdict, and I had delivered it. The door closed on the sound of his unraveling. I walked down the corridor, the wheels of my suitcase a soft whir on the carpet. I did not go home. I went to a modest, extended-stay hotel that Rebecca had recommended. I stayed there for 3 weeks while the legal machinery completed its initial, grinding turns. The process was methodical. The frozen funds in the joint account were eventually returned, minus the amounts he had already spent, which were tallied as restitution. The reverse mortgage was voided due to fraud. The lender paid off from the recovered proceeds. The house was placed on the market. I did not set foot in it again. A realtor, a friend of Gloria's, handled everything. I signed the necessary papers in Rebecca's office. My signature, steady, and my own. Criminal charges were filed against Marcus. The district attorney's office, armed with the evidence portfolio, offered a plea deal. He took it. Fraud, theft, financial exploitation of an elderly person. He would serve time, followed by probation. The sentence was not long, but it was a felony. It would be on his record forever. I did not attend the sentencing. Rebecca informed me of the outcome. I acknowledged it. I felt no satisfaction, only a grim sense of closure. Chloe, after cooperating with the investigation, was not charged. She filed for divorce. I heard she moved back to her home state. I did not reach out. With a portion of the recovered equity, I made a down payment. My new home is a condo in a 55-plus community called Willow Grove. It is on the ground floor. It has 2 bedrooms, a small patio that faces a communal garden, and large windows that let in the morning sun. The walls are painted a soft, warm white. My furniture from the old house, what little I wanted, fits without crowding. The rest I sold or gave away. I bought a new armchair, a modern one with excellent lumbar support. This morning, Rebecca Shaw came for tea. She's no longer just my attorney. She has become a friend. She arrived carrying a box of pastries from a bakery she likes. "You look well, Eleanor," she said, placing the box on my kitchen counter. "My kitchen is small, efficient. Everything is within reach." "I feel well," I said, and it was the truth. I poured the tea into 2 ceramic mugs. We sat in the living area. The sunlight stretched across the pale wood floor. "The civil suit is settled," she said. "The final judgment includes a lien against any future assets he acquires to ensure the remainder of the restitution. It's over." I nodded. I had expected this news. It was the last loose thread. "Thank you, Rebecca, for everything." "You did the work," she said. "I just navigated the system." We drank our tea in comfortable silence for a moment. She looked around. "This suits you." "It does," I said. "It is mine. The deed is in my name alone. The bills come to me. I understand every line." After she left, I took my tea out to the patio. The garden was quiet. A few residents were walking on the paved paths. I sat and watched the light change on the leaves of a young maple tree. I thought about Marcus. The grief for him is a separate thing now, compartmentalized. I mourn the boy he was, the man I hoped he would become. I do not miss the man who sat in my kitchen and planned my displacement. That man is a stranger who bears my son's face. The law has dealt with him. My heart has buried the son I loved. What rises in me now, what fills the spaces that were once occupied by worry and performance, is a profound sense of peace, it is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of security. It is the quiet of a door that locks, a bill that is paid, a decision that is mine alone to make. I am not a victim. I am not a fragile woman to be managed. I am Eleanor Williams, retired school librarian. I am a woman who, when pushed to the brink, did not fall. She assessed her resources, formulated a plan, and executed it with patience and precision. She used the systems available to her, legal, financial, digital, to defend herself. She rediscovered her own strength, not as a furious force, but as a collected, enduring one. The key to my condo is on a simple ring in my pocket. I take it out sometimes and hold its solid shape in my palm. It is a small thing, but it represents everything: autonomy, safety, a future of my own design. The sun is warm on my face. I finish my tea. Later, I may walk to the community library. I may call Gloria. I may simply sit and read a book. The choice is mine. The silence in this space is not the silence of an empty stage. It is the silence of a page after the story has been told, a good and satisfying story, now complete. I close my eyes, feeling the warmth, holding my key. This is not an ending. It is a foundation, and it is mine.